Good evening, everybody. What's happening? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. I know it's been a little minute since I've been on here to do topics about Black history or whatnot. So today is December 12th of 2023. So we got a few more weeks before we get to January the 1st of 2024. So in a few more weeks, we'll be in 2024. It's funny how time flies, right? Today, I want to talk about the Black Ozarkers. Okay, the Black Ozarkers were African descended people that lived in the Ozarks, which is the low mountain region located in parts of Arkansas, not Massachusetts, Arkansas, Missouri, and part of Oklahoma. All right. Many people may not have heard of the Black Ozarks, right? Because they're not often talked about in history. Okay. So it's funny because I came across someone's profile picture and they say they are a descendant of the Black Ozark, but they don't identify as being African descendant. So I said, let me find out what the Black Ozark is because I want to share this information. I'm one of those people that if I find something new, I like to share it if it's valuable. And this to me is valuable. All right. Okay. So let me go ahead and get started. And make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. All right, so what I want to do is I try to find out as much information as I possibly can. So I came up with quite a few information. So let's go to the first information where it's talk about the minorities in Ozarks. So now this comes from the website, which is ozarkscivilwar.org, right? And it talks about the minorities. So as you can see, this is a picture of a brother, appears to be, who's from the Ozark area. All right, so let's go down to where it says the southwestern Missouri had been attracting U.S. born immigrants for decades before the Civil War began. The Indian Removal Acts had opened the region to settlement, lured by the fertile soil and river fed valleys of the Ozark Mountains. So the population in the Ozarks grew roughly 80% in the 1850s. These numbers represent mostly white settlers moving west, but living among them were several minorities. So by the 1850s, approximately 75% of Missourians claimed Southern ancestry, hailing primarily from Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. By 1860, Greene County, the focal point of Southwest Missouri, had an overwhelming majority of its residents immigrating from the Upper South. And for those of you that don't know what the Upper South is, the Upper South is Virginia, Maryland, parts of North Carolina. Yeah, those areas are considered to be Upper South, okay, or the Mason-Dixie line. So they call it the Mason-Dixie line, or they call it the Upper South. Now below, when you go to South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Georgia, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida, that's considered as the Deep South, okay. But the Upper South is Virginia, Maryland, those places. Those are considered as Upper South. All right. But get back to the article. So let's go down right here. It says immigrants of foreign birth were not so quick moved to Southwest Missouri. Perceived competition with slave labor may have been part of the reason why so many immigrants of foreign birth settled in St. Louis. In that time period, St. Louis experienced a massive growth. Her invaluable waterways allowed for transportation of goods from across Missouri to be distributed throughout the United States. From 1832 to 1850, the number of steamboats in St. Louis increased from 532 to more than 3,000. St. Louis also saw a large boom of German immigrants, and by 1850, three residents of St. Louis was of German origin compared to the 7.2% of the entire state outside of St. Louis. All right. So let's go down. Now it says over 20,000 Native Americans served in the Civil War, mostly from the Indian territories in Kansas and modern day Oklahoma. Their loyalties varied, and many nations fractured and fought for both the Union and Confederacy. Right? So, in some cases, the war pitted tribes against one another, wavering support from the five civilized tribes of Indian territory caused the federal government to begin withholding annuity payments for fears the funds would fall into the rebel hands. All right. Now let's go down where it says the majority of the Ozarks African American population was brought to the region against their will. Slavery in the Ozarks was not as prevalent as the river valley regions of central Missouri and southeast Arkansas, but it did exist. Most slave owners worked alongside their slaves, forging a life for themselves out of the land. As the war progressed, more and more African Americans earned their freedom, either legally or illegally. Some had the opportunity to join the Union Army. Views of African American soldiers vary from regiment to regiment, but many white soldiers were eager to have help fighting the rebels, especially if it ended the war quicker. Now, it goes down to say African Americans were part of the Missouri and Arkansas Ozarks slave community before the war. The overall slave population was not great. However, the Ozarks, compared to other parts of the states where the economy depended more greatly on slave labor. Missouri, for example, had the highest slave population in her northern tier along the Missouri River in what has been called the Black Belt. It was in this region that the slave dependent crops of tobacco, hemp, and cotton were established. In Arkansas, only Washington County in the Northwest Ozark had a proportionally high population of slaves. The Ozark of Missouri had the highest slave population in Greene County, which also boasted the largest overall county population in the 1860 census. So most Ozarks County had a low percentage of slaves, considering that Missouri was a slave state. And this could be a reflection of how how the state came to find support from the Union and not the Confederacy in the Civil War. So, and then it goes on to say, as the war came to its bloody conclusion in the mid 1865, the free slaves of the Ozark were faced with a choice of where to go, what to do, and how to do it. 1870 census data shows an overall drop in the number of African Americans that lived in each county, with only a few, among them Greene County, showing population gains. This would suggest that a great number of freemen relocated outside of the Ozarks to cities of industry in order to seek employment and the benefits of urbanization. Now, who were the freemen? The freemen were the former slaves. They were the former African slaves that earned their freedom. Okay? And then they were people who were born of parents that were former slaves. But when people hear the word freeman, right, they try to make a distinction and separate them from the African heritage or their African ancestry. And you can't do that. You cannot separate those people from that, because at the end of the day, they are still attached to their African lineage. Just like the Black Ozarkers, they are attached to their African lineage, right? Absolutely. Okay. So now let's get back to this article. Let's see what else we can find up in here. So it says minorities in the Ozark were largely distinguished by their accent and by the color of their skin. In the post-war, they did their best to blend in with the Ozarks region's culture. All right. So you guys can check this article out for yourself. It's plethora of information out there. But I just can't believe that some people just go along with anyone telling them anything they want to hear, as opposed to information they need to hear. You know what I'm saying? But it's kind of strange to me. Why would I want to go along with the get along, or somebody tell me something that I want to hear instead of what I need to hear? All right, so there was a documentary that came out. It's called Generation African American Experience in the Springfield and the Ozarks film screening at Center for Missouri Studies, November 14th. All right. So if you are in the Missouri area, right, I'm quite sure you know more about the Ozarks than I do. For those of you that's really studious in African American history. And those in Arkansas or those in Oklahoma probably know more about it than I do. All right. So this comes from the State Historical Society of Missouri.org. It said Generation African American Experience in Springfield and the Ozark Film Screening at Center for Missouri Studies, November 14th. Right? So they had a filming um back in November. Okay. So the name of it is called Generation African American Experiences in Springfield and the Ozark. So it's a new documentary produced by the Ozark Public Television. The film will be shown at the State Historical Society of Missouri. And so the address was 605 M Street, Columbia, on November the 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. Okay. So yeah, this is the information. It says from slavery and emancipation to the civil rights movement and beyond, Black Americans have made important contributions to cultural, social, and political fabrics of the Ozarks since it was first settled in the early 1800s. All right. So that's that information. All right. And then here's a book called White Man's Heaven. The White Man's Heaven. This book was written by Kimberly Harper. All right, so it's an excerpt, basically. So this is not the whole entire book. But let's look at the introduction. White Man's Heaven, the lynching and explosions of blacks in the Southern Ozark, 1894 to 1909. Right. Oh. This book came out in 2010. And it says, we were once slave, the white man's heaven. All right, so that's the acknowledgement, etc., the introduction. So let's go into chapter 1. All right. All right, so here's chapter 1. I'm trying to find. I just found it on here. All right, here we go, right here. So, chapter 1 goes on to say, it says black crime was a subject that seized the attention of Americans in the 1880s and 1890s. Accounts of horrific murders, rapes, and theft committed by blacks dominate the front pages of many newspapers across the country, not just the South. Graphic description of brutal crimes carried out by blacks captured the public's imagination. So, news of lynch mobs across the South also featured prominently on the front page. Editorials supporting mob justice could be found in hundreds of newspapers across the South. As a result, many whites across the South believed that the legal system was slow and ineffective. All right. So it basically talked about the crime that was happening with blacks in Pierce City, right? So according to this book, basically going to the Ozark history, all right, in the South. So therefore, it talks about Arkansas. All right. So for those of you that may not know, that Arkansas and Oklahoma are both southern states. All right. You just don't hear much about it. You know what I'm saying? Many people might think that Oklahoma is the Midwest, but it's really not the Midwest, it's the South. All right. And Arkansas is the South too. You know what I'm saying? So, but they just not very popular states. Okay. But basically, that book goes into the account of the Southern life in the Ozarks. All right. So it says White Man's Heaven. That's the name of the book. If you want to purchase it, you can get it on Amazon. I know that to be a fact. And you guys can check it out for yourselves. Okay. All right. All right. So let's go into the Wikipedia information. All right. So let's go into Wiki source. All right. So just kind of give you guys a general idea. Okay. So I'm gonna go up here where it says Ozarkers, who have also been referred to as Ozark Mountains Black, are Afro Americans who are native or inhabitants of the once isolated Ozarks uplift, a heavily forest and mountainous geocultural region in the United States of Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the extremely southern corner of Kansas. They are mostly descended of the enslaved from America's upper South and Appalachian region of Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, and North Carolina, being brought by European American slave owners in the Western expansion beginning in the early 19th century. Some are also descendants of black people who brought to the region enslaved by Native Americans on the trails of tears or up the Mississippi River by the French to work on small farms and in mineral mines during the French and Spanish colonial period. There was also a number of families that voluntarily migrate into the region and settle before and after the Civil War, all of African, the keyword African descent, with many also having biracial heritage, being of both African, European, or African and Native American descent. Some, like the Black Ozark folk, Joseph Yakum, were of triracial heritage, descending from all three. Okay. All right. So that's the information. Keyword African descent. They were not any other descent. I mean, although they did have Native and European descent, but they had what? African. Okay. So the Black Ozark was African descended people. Again, you cannot run away from that. That's the reality of who we are. Stop running away from it. You don't like it? Take it up with your DNA. Right? Take it up with your DNA. All right. All right, so it goes into the culture, music, Ozark. The Black Ozarkers share many cultural traits with other inhabiting the Ozarks after generations and centuries of cohabiting in close proximity to Native Americans and Europeans due to settlement and the conditions of slavery. There were an exchange and sometimes syncretism of cultures. Okay, so that was evident in their musical practice. Popular instruments in Ozark communities throughout the 19th and early 20th century includes the banjo, which was brought to America by the enslaved West Africans, and the fiddle and bones, which were brought by Western Europeans. These instruments were played and enjoyed by the Native Americans, Euro Americans, and Afro Americans, who sometimes played them together and in a way heavily influenced by the slave communities and their African roots. In the Oklahoma region of the Ozark, in the Cherokee Nation and neighboring communities, dances were held during the Christmas season when some slaves were given a week to a month off from labor to go and visit family members at nearby plantation. Okay. These dances were an exchange of culture and influences came together, were attended by the Cherokee, whites and blacks, both enslaved and free, were all danced, played instruments, and enjoyed the festivities. Okay. Another example of the blending of cultures and influence includes the music that came out the church. The Ozarks, many of the enslaved attended church with their enslavers, though segregated, they would sing together. All right. So in the Oklahoma Ozark, the enslaved would sing some songs in the Cherokee language, hymns of English origin, spirituals with shouts, robust dancing, and the call and respond practice that came from their West African heritage. It don't get no more African than that. All right. Don't get no more African than that. And then watch it talk about the religion. All right. The religion is historically black. Ozark throughout the region have predominantly been a Protestant faith, though there has been long, yeah, though there has also long been a black Catholic present in the eastern Ozark border region of Missouri in old French settlement, like what is it? What's the name of this? Okay, I don't know the name of that area, so but I'm gonna pull it up for you guys. Okay, so oh, it's pronounced as Saint Gervais. Okay, it's pronounced as Saint Gervais. So old French settlement like Saint Gervais, right? And churches in the black community of the Ozark were center of the black life and culture. So, just like any other particular black community, the center foundation of our faith and our beliefs is the church, right? And then, of course, Islam is second, and then everything else come into place. But the foundation in the African American community, when it comes to religious faith, is the church. The church. Okay. So they talk about the celebration. A more distinct part of traditional Black Ozark culture was and continues to be the celebration of Emancipation Day, a holiday celebrated on August 4th by the Afro Americans throughout the entire Ozark region, marking the end of slavery. August 4th was likely chosen as a suitable day 1 month after American independence to represent freedom, but a freedom deferred to African Americans, right? Every year, dating back to the 1860s in northeast Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, and all over the Missouri Ozark, the black community would come together by the hundreds and thousands in cities and towns and have picnics, barbecues, dances, parade, and balls. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that information. So when I'm just showing you guys, and I have been showing y'all in my videos that African Americans are not just monolithic people. Okay. We have a culture within a culture. You got the Creole people, right, out of Louisiana, Black Creoles. You got the Gullah Geechee people out in the Carolinas, southern part of Georgia, or well, not the southern. It's like, I wouldn't say it's the central, but kind of like going north, kind of going towards north, but like northeast of Georgia. Let's put it like that. All right. You got who else? You got the blacks in the Appalachian Mountains. Okay. So you got the Gullah Geechee people, you got the Creole people, you got the Black Ozarkers, and you got the Appalachian people. And it's a whole lot. So it's a diversity of blacks within the African American culture. All right. So if anybody say that we are just monolithic people, no, not really. Okay. However, we are collectively, but we have our own diversity. We have our own cultural practice in various parts of the area, especially when you come to the South. In various parts of the South, you will see a lot of diversity. You know what I'm saying? You will see differences. There's a difference in what's going on in Louisiana and what's going on in Georgia, right? There's a difference in Oklahoma and Virginia. There's a difference in Arkansas and Texas, right? You see? So there is diversity. But at the end of the day, we all go back to being African descended people. We all go back to being those descended of the enslaved Africans in the United States. Can't sugarcoat history. You can't run away from it. You can't deny it. I mean, you can, but then what good's gonna do? Your DNA is gonna tell it all. So, yeah. However, you guys have a good one, and I thank you all for watching my video. So make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share the channel, and all that great stuff. So until next time, peace and power elevation. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm out. Peace. Thank you.